Hello, good evening, Masa al Khair, and welcome to our monthly series Words for Palestine, an evening of centering Palestine and Palestinian voices during a time of unspeakable horror and deliberate erasure. My name is Riwa Zinati, and I am the curator of public programming at the Arab American National Museum here in Dearborn, Michigan. The Arab American National Museum is the first and only museum of its kind in the US devoted to telling and recording the Arab American story. It serves as a touchstone that connects communities to Arab American culture, history, and experiences. Before we begin tonight's program, I'd like to ground us with an acknowledgement that the Arab American National Museum sits on the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe peoples, known as the Three Fires Confederacy, and of the Wyandot people, and that it resides within the region with the highest concentration of Arab Americans in the nation. We also acknowledge our neighboring city, Detroit, as Anishinaabe territory and as being the largest majority Black city in the nation, with a long legacy of African diasporic contributions. Together, we work to uplift and honor our Indigenous and diasporic communities. This past December, we hosted the First Words for Palestine online reading to bridge solidarity with our families in Gaza and to raise funds for PCRF and Palestine Legal. Excuse me. During this time of censorship and silencing, it's important to note that Palestine Legal is dedicated to protecting the civil and constitutional rights of anyone who speaks out for Palestinian freedom in the US. You can see the QR codes here to my upper right corner if you would like to donate to PCRF and Palestine Legal. As we continue to center Palestinian artists, as well as artists who are actively working towards the liberation of Palestine and to raise funds to honor and protect those who speak out, our event remains free. Before we dive in, I'd also like to thank our partners, Mizna, Rawi, and Palestine Rights, as well as the artists whom we'll hear from tonight. I also want to thank you, our audience, and invite you to also share and drop questions in the chat if you'd like to ask our readers and participants anything about their work. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge that Words for Palestine came about as a collective effort back in December 2023 by friends and writers Leila Halabi, Alia Yunus, Lisa Suhair Majaj, Diana Abu Jabir, Suzanne Muaddi Darraj, Leila Farah, and Ghassan Zainuddin. And since then, we have continued the conversation. Speaking of Ghassan Zainuddin, I'm happy to share that he will be our moderator for the evening. So before I hand it over to Ghassan, I just want to share his biography first. Ghassan Zainuddin is the author of the award-winning and critically acclaimed short story collection Dearborn, right over here, I'm reading it, and co-editor of the creative nonfiction anthology Hada Baladuna, Arab American Narratives of Boundary and Belonging. He lives with his wife and two daughters in Ohio, where he is an assistant professor of creative writing at Oberlin College. Welcome, and thank you for moderating, Ghassan.
Thank you so much, Adiwa, for that introduction, and thank you to the staff of the at the Arab American National Museum and all the co-sponsors of this event, and thank you to the four writers today. It's a real great honor to share this space with you all, and thank you to our audience. So the first writer is Lina Abu Talib, who is an Egyptian and Palestinian writer, asking you to commit to the Palestinian liberation struggle. And you could read Lina's work at www.linaabutalib.onl. Lina, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ghassan, and thank you, everyone, and thank you for the museum for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm going to read 3 poems today, 2 of which are not mine. So the poem that I'm going to be opening with is my friend Aya Saqir's, and it's called I Will Be Silent Now. And it was originally published in a magazine called ADI, A-D-I. Okay. Your names are the only language that hold any meaning, penned into the skin of your own limbs, by you in living by the barrier after. Even this is wrought. So give me Arabic, with fewer digits to tray my shame. سأسكت الآن. The next poem that I'm going to read is also by my other friend Summer Farah from her debut chapbook that you can find at Game Over Books. The poem is called In Another Life, Link is a Poet. My beloved city, we are the lucky ones. We worship a woman immortalized by stone, her trek impossible now. Our realms are severed by sky. Oh, what blood have we forgotten? Even when the sun sets, the same monsters patrol our streets. My beloved stone city fed false borders. O cruel superiority, how much culture have you spoiled? O cruel delusions, how much blood have we forgotten? Demise comes for us all, no matter the proximity to light. History says the chosen one places foot and sword firm even before the clouds dissolve. My boundless sky, I know we used to be yours too. There's evidence in our eyes, in candles lit for weddings, with the word for spiders. Please, before the stone city falls, Goddess, forgive us for our hubris. Forgive us for us. With even our wells drowned in history, our names dedicated to myth, dedicated to easier passage. Please, let every realm return to how we were. Let earth rejoin sky, return and become more. Please, my beloved city, want it still. And then the last poem that I'm going to read is my poem, and it's called Persephone's Sword. Dance with me, your hand on my hip. Listen for the beggars. Call for mercy. Do you have a shekel to spare? I lost my gold in Amman and wept for months. Where have you touched me? I closed my eyes and the sky fell. Glory, transparency, lie of a small oppression. Photograph of grief. My father curled towards the window, bereft of his son. Yadonai. How I would give the world to you. In Frankfurt airport, I bought a 30-minute shower and cried the entire way through. There is always a before and after. I no longer remember who I was before your death. I collect photographs to remember what I once looked like. I am amazed every time I find myself beautiful in the midst of it all. July, October. Have you grieved enough? Sometimes I imagine Cairo now, how different it is with no one left for me to love inside it. Are we drawing up new names for the seas and its prophecies? There's a river gleaming, golden mists, diamonds crushed on the tongue of waves. To be human is to despair, wretched and devastation. To be human is to ride a train to Alex, collapse on the seabed and find eternity in our love. Look, the world has ended. Do you see it too? That doesn't mean there isn't something still worth living for. The grotesque horrifies me, others find solace in it. Why make lust from a feverish human lost in limbo between species? Love will reinvent you. I am made from all the people who love me. I know exactly who I am. Why do you still believe we are made out of images and not hearts? Are we all martyrs? My brother will take 7. Only God can dissolve me. Only God can judge me. Go back. There's still time. Why are you so ready to transcend humanity? There are no flowers on the moon. You know I love the sea. I love being human. I love this earth. I love my grief. I love my desire. I am not meant from this. I am not meant to flee from the horrors of my own humanity. The wind is calling. Persephone, our language a secret, our bodies held sweet. I'll see you soon. The underworld is a home as much as the sea and the land. My sword, my gentle sword, you are a part of me still. Okay, thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nina. That was just so powerful. Yeah, so many so many striking lines. Our next our next writer is Summer Awad, and Summer is a multi-genre writer with roots in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Nablus, Palestine. She holds an MFA in creative writing and environment from Iowa State University. In 2023, she was awarded a De Groot Foundation Lando Grant in Immigration, Migration, and refugee writing for her essay collection In Progress about her work in refugee resettlement. Her poetry and creative nonfiction have appeared in Adi Magazine, J Journal, About Place Journal, Chapter 16, and others, with poems forthcoming in the Rising Phoenix Review. Her play, Walls, a Play for Palestine, was produced in 2016 at the New York International Fringe Festival. Please welcome Summer Awad.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for having me. Thank you, Ghassan, for the introduction, and thank you to the Arab American National Museum for inviting us. I'm really been grateful for folks who've been holding space for us to share words during this time. The first couple pieces that I'm going to share, I'm going to try to fit in 4 poems. The first couple I'm going to share are about doing grad school and being a writer during the genocide. And just Sara Aziza who's with us, wrote a very beautiful piece about witnessing. And I think, thinking about what it means to witness this at this point. There's also the collection that Mizna just published from Omar Sakar, which has really influenced me. And I have been writing similar poems about what it's like to go to yoga in the genocide, what it's like to do grad school in the genocide. And so these first couple pieces I'm going to share are about being in graduate school and writing during this time. So this one is called Grad School in the Time of Genocide. You will write about one urgency to the screaming soundtrack of another. To do so, you will turn the grief down to a simmer. You will tell yourself that the work is the resistance. Your Fundamentals of Public Speaking student will give a speech about how we need to build more walls, and your daydreams will be spray paint and paragliders. You will defend your thesis, and you will defend your people's right to exist, and you will defend, mostly to yourself, the right to call yourself one of your people. Your white professor will tell you your writing could get you killed, and you will laugh, as if you wouldn't spin stories from all these histories you hold. So there's that first piece. And this next one is a poem that I wrote after a writer's retreat that I attended with my MFA program. Right now, it's tentatively titled Writer's Retreat in the Time of Genocide. I think similar to Omar Sakar, I'm trying to, I kind of had these similar, like kind of simple titles, but I'm kind of riffing off of like Love in the Time of Cholera type of thing. So this is Writer's Retreat in the Time of Genocide, and it has an epigraph from Andrea Gibson's poem When the Bough Breaks, which is my favorite poem of theirs. And the epigraph says, do we really believe our need for Prozac has nothing to do with Baghdad, with Kabul, with the Mexican border, with the thousands of US school kids bleeding budget cuts to fuel war tanks? We sit around the crackling orange fire, throwing leaves in to watch how the world burns. The orange threads through the veins, center to edges, before crumbling, blackening, falling, charred. When fire rained down on Al Ahli Hospital, it was quicker, brighter, more yellow, more white hot. The charred remains, not leaves, but bodies, infant bodies, limbs, medical supplies, ambulances furling, smoking. We look up at the stars in the black rural night, and I notice the brightest one has moved slow across the sky. That the world turns means this star has passed over Gaza, gazing back down at us, at our uneven destinies. I am not afraid the sky will fall down upon me, that it will rain fire, and for this I am ashamed. We watch sparks fly and discuss going off our meds, discover we are on the same SSRI. When I remember that I took a hot shower today, that my sister sleeps soundly in her bed, that I drank hot chocolate and ate Doritos, I want to hurl the pill bottle into the lake. What claim, what right do I have to pain? Thank you. There's that piece. The third piece I'm going to read is a piece that I wrote to kind of resist some of the language that I've been seeing that is infuriating. whenever the Israeli government commits another type of massacre, then they go to investigate themselves and tell us that, of course, they didn't do anything wrong. But before they do that investigation, the standard kind of press release that we see is that the incident is under review. We had the El Maghazi massacre, the incident is under review. Every time a hospital is bombed, the incident is under review. And so I took this phrase and I made a poem out of it because I wanted to repeat this phrase and kind of interrogate it for the kind of obscuring language that it is. So this is called The Incident is Under Review. Severed foot in kid-sized shoe. The incident is under review. Embryos before they grew. The incident is under review. Bodies slain where they withdrew. The incident is under review. Face maimed so we know not who. The incident is under review. IVs still in skin gone blue. The incident is under review. Corpses rot, survivors few. The incident is under review. Screams of mothers heard anew. The incident is under review. Moans of drones that all night flew. The incident is under review. Strikes on white flags passing through. The incident is under review. They claim they know not what they do. The incident is under review. Thank you. And I've got one more piece that's a little different. I feel like I've kind of been returning to my spoken word roots a little bit. And this piece, I guess, was kind of maybe inspired by this incident is under review piece because I've been thinking about, I was trying to write a full poem ending with the same rhyme in every single line. But I've been thinking about, being Palestinian American writers or just writers in diaspora in particular. And I think when we first start out as writers, I think we have this impulse to kind of like write towards the colonial gaze and kind of prove ourselves. And I find that the writing that I appreciate the most is the writing for the people inside, those of us who just kind of like get it and don't have to explain ourselves. And I think resisting this impulse to explain ourselves or to translate within our writing. And so this is kind of maybe a lighthearted piece about not only, Noor and I were just talking right before about how important the last Rawi gathering was for us to all be able to gather with people who like shared our grief. And so I think this poem is both about that, about being around other Palestinians and people who understand what it's like to witness this moment, but also writing for other Palestinians. And maybe this could be tentatively titled Writing to One Another. So it's kind of a spoken word piece that I just threw together. I want to write inside jokes. I want you to just know those are my Zayt and Za'atar bowls as we massage that same green mixture into off-brand crescent rolls. I want someone who just knows, someone who doesn't have to be told, who already grasps the task to have to hold so many homes and what watching this disaster does to all us in our bones. I want to write beyond the tropes of weeping ancient olive groves, and that doesn't mean I want us to shed the old. But I want more words about our hopes, want us grasping fateful futures with visions bright and bold. I want an untranslated poems our displaced tongue can hardly hold. And when we go back to the Beled in droves, we'll be wearing college sweatshirts from our diasporic homes and smiles of recognition that will penetrate our souls. And maybe we'll decide to stay. Maybe we'll still go, since everything we are and were is scattered around the globe. But I'll look for us in words and poems, kin friends who just know, who write without explaining, who write without a goal, who write for all the ones of us who won't have to be told. And that's my last piece. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Summer, for those 4 incredibly powerful poems. Wow. Our third writer is Sara Aziza. Sara is a Palestinian American writer and translator. Her essays, journalism, poetry, and creative nonfiction have appeared in The New Yorker, The Baffler, Harper's Magazine, Mizna, Jewish Currents, Lux Magazine, The Intercept, NPR, and The Nation, among others. She is the recipient of numerous grants from the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting, a 2022 2022 resident at Tin House Books and a 2023 Margins Fellow at the Asian American Writers Workshop. Her book, forthcoming in spring 2025, is a hybrid work of memoir, lyricism, and oral history exploring the intertwined legacies of diaspora, colonialism, and the American dream. Please welcome Sara Aziza.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of the organizers. Thank you, Ghassan, for hosting. Thank you to the Arab American National Museum. It's really an honor to be with you all. And thank you, Lina and Samad, for those amazing sharings. Yeah, I'm Sara. I'm going to read first a short excerpt from my manuscript, and then we'll see how much time I have left. This is a piece from, my forthcoming book, and I'm just going to drop in. I'm speaking here in this piece about my grandmother, and this takes place in the 1960s in Gaza. To her, the world was always a mingle of diabolical and divine. As a young woman, she was once stricken senseless when the night sky split, a heavenly light over her. Like the prophet, Hurriya had never learned to read, but had pleaded that Allah would teach her the Quran anyway. In a flash, she received the Fatiha, the opening, the first and most recited chapter, which she prayed each day to her death. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. She taught her sons a devil-tricking dance to perform at the door. One step out, one step back in, only blessing them afterward. Go with God and come back to me. But there are things no amount of prayers can stay. The next war came so quickly that my father, age 6, did not understand why he was forbidden from the beach. He begged for the water, complaining of the heat. June in Gaza was blazing in 1967, but Hurriya kept her boys inside as armies approached. She and the neighbors had dug a trench, ready if the bombing came. Bored, little Ziad crawled in the shaded hole. Looking up, he felt the static in the air, but could not read his mother's eyes. A plane ripped the air over their heads. Eardrums splitting, he cannoned to his mother's lap. Ibrahim, 17, begged his mother to let him fight. He'd heard some men, teens, fathers, retirees, had stored up arms somewhere. By the time she relented, he found only abandoned streets. A bystander approached. Go home. The fight is already lost. The stranger added a bitter joke my uncle would repeat for 50 years. We'll drink tea in Tel Aviv tonight. What he meant was, there is no more map of us. History named the conflict the 6 Days War, but for the Arab world, it was Neksa, the setback. Neksa, the long shadow of Nekba, the cruel younger brother of catastrophe, reminding that there is always more to lose. 3 days after they sheltered in place, the loudspeakers sounded for the first time. Scratchy, electronic voices ordered households to hang white flags. It was Ibrahim, the would-be soldier, who hoisted his mother's snowy shawl over the door. When the Zionist soldiers knocked, calling for all men above 14, her 2 teenage sons emerged. The soldiers were young men themselves, shouting at the women to stay back. Blanched sons begged their mothers to comply. Husbands showed steeled backs to trembling daughters and wives. Ziad slipped away, trailed his captive brothers with a cluster of little boys. In an empty square near the sea, he watched guns point, ordering the men's faces to the sand. There are things that a body does not unlearn. There is a kind of fear that enters the blood, mingles where we cannot see. And there is pain that lives aloof from language, a deep-sea creature with no eyes. Beneath the skin, it keeps its own memory and time. The soldiers were after not blood, but gold that day. Each pocket was turned out, every wallet confiscated. The captives staggered away without their watches, bodies returned to them. After the week of war, the white flags stayed up for days. Before, Gaza had been a way station, ground for the 250,000 refugees who stoked village names like embers, their eyes warm with return. Now, the lines around it hardened, cleaving futures and barring families. Beyond, parts of Palestine were declared the West Bank, while Arabs in Jerusalem were informed they now lived in Israel. The displaced had become occupied, and it seemed all oxygen had fled. My father had been sick, uneating and unsleeping since he glimpsed his teacher's corpse. On the eve of the invasion, the man who had taught him to read Jannan lost his mind. He had burst out of his front door, wild with loss and rage. His last words, shouted over the begging voices of his family, were, to the soldiers, "Go back, you swine." Forbidden from burial, the man's body lay in the street until the curfew was raised. Even then, his family was permitted only to throw shallow soil over him. Days later, they unearthed the corpse, moving him to a proper grave. The young boy, who is my father, would never forget the smell. The occupiers began to pressure the living off the land. Hurriya sent word to her husband, "Khalas, this is no place for our sons." She put her name on a transfer list. Leaving, she was asked to sign a set of papers she couldn't read. For a signature, they inked her thumb. Later, this document would be used to prove she had forfeit her right to return. But returning for now was far from mind. Ahead of her, the road would take months. Her boys climbed into the truck, bent to give her their hands. They pulled away, their backs to the sea, the date palms, their 2 rooms in the sand. Hurriya left the grave of her daughter Bahia and the body of their cat Hamdan, a cat she rescued from bullying boys, who arrived as a blur of black fur, sprinting like Ziad for her lap. Did she have space to miss him too? Did her goodbyes form a rank in descending order of their ache? Does a body carry such separations as weight or empty space? Thank you.
So that was that was just so riveting and just so vivid and taking us to Gaza in the 1960s. That's just so powerful. Thank you. Our final reader is Noor Hindi, and Noor is calling on you to join the global fight for the survival and liberation of Palestinians and all oppressed people. Anywhere and everywhere you are, you can disrupt, advocate, speak out, and refuse in small and big ways. Revolution until freedom. Hindi is a Palestinian American poet. Her debut collection of poems, Dear God, Dear Bones, Dear Yellow, was an honorable mention for the Arab American Book Award. She is currently editing a Palestinian poetry anthology with George Abraham, which is coming out via Haymarket Books in 2025. And you can follow her on Instagram at Noor K. Hindi. Please welcome Noor.
Hello. My cat has also joined this reading, which is she's just gonna sit here. Thank you so much, Lena, Sada, Summer, for your words. I'm really grateful to be writing and sharing alongside you. Thank you, Rewa and Ghassan, for your labor. And thank you for the folks that are tuning in. Please do donate to Palestine Legal Fund and PCRF. And I'll copy the words of Rasha Abdul Hadi at the last, I think it was the last reading. They said to figure out what amount you're comfortable donating and to double that. And I think it's so critical right now, and just in terms of looking at the long middle of wherever we're at right now, to quote Fargo too. I'm going to read 3 poems for y'all. I am in a weird headspace with my work right now, which something I will share is I lost my brother in January, so a lot of my poems have been reckoning with both this personal and political grief, and so we'll see how it goes. In which someone casually asks, "How's your heart?" Alone, look, Lord, loss. I don't want to love a single fucking thing. I am crying in the goddamn parking lot at Lowe's, dear ghost. I am listening to the soundtrack of your life, and it's really fucking sad in this Mazda. Zoom, zoom, bitch. You better have something interesting to say as I weed this garden, this closet, this grass, undead, undo your death, the long winter. I refuse a darkness. So here's a funny story I tell you laughing. My brother is dead, and the body is that of a well-developed, well-nourished adult male, and the body is received in a t-shirt, tank top, pants, underwear, socks, and shoes, and the teeth are in good condition, and the pupils are equal, round, and regular, and my friends are holding my eyes, and I am not afraid of anything anymore. And when I hold my friends and my 2 eyes, I remember some of us live and some of us choose to be alive. And this is not a poem about joy, but a dedication to the child I overhear at the beach who loves a toy so much she buries it in the sand, and the body is cool to the touch, and my heart is nowhere and everywhere, spilling its thorns in parking lots and living rooms and gyms and the beds of every person I've ever failed to love, and the neck is of normal configuration as I watch a child dig through an unmarked graveyard and reckon with the violence it takes to love a thing so much you'd bury it. This poem is this next one. Thank you. These are like very fresh, so it's really, really strange reading them. This next one I wrote and is partially dedicated to all of the student advocacy we've been seeing on campus, and particularly after the pigs at the University of Michigan tore down the encampment, which was a beautiful space of what a future of true community and liberation could look like. And it's called Continuance. Every month, a new month. I wake up and start running. I wake up and my face is small and numb. If you make it to mile 10, you can make it to anything. My arms refuse everything. My brother died in January. The kitchen sink was emptied of clutter. The bedroom light needed replaced. I am afraid of stairways, the fragility of children, my mother's hands, their gentle reach toward me. For hours, I lose empathy for anything that moves. Lessons learned. You can build a garden and weeds will bloom. You can speak of joy and your heart will bleed. The sun will rotate and you'll hate it. Dear Allah, I am writing to you in green, and there are children under the rubble. The boy gasps, I am alive, I am alive, I am alive and useless as Ivy. The students are tear gassed. A pig looks at me and smiles. I daydream of smashing his head into the sidewalk. I daydream of bombs in the sky murdering the president of the United States. I sleep with the lights on, shake until my eyes force close. To be alive is to be a wound, collecting sorrows. I tell my lover I have tried every version of grief like a new pair of socks. Once I was less resilient. Once my brother was alive and wanted to live. Once a dispatcher asked me, is there a gun at the residence? The gun is in my mouth, I tell her. I've been holding it here for years, but I keep getting distracted, but I keep collecting days. To continue is a mercy. To continue is to think, if I end this life, would I miss this life? And then walk into the ocean. Your grief, a dog on a leash. Your grief, an Olympic swimmer racing you to the soft center of everyone you love. And the last poem I'll read is dedicated to my friends and the group of queer women I play basketball with in Dearborn who are so beautiful and lovely and keep me alive. Fuck the metaphor. Everything is as beautiful as beauty. The water is so blue. The sun is so large. The sky is a sky, is a sky, is a sky. Have you looked at the goddamn sky? Everything obvious is beautiful. Like that bird with wings like wings that fly the way birds fly. The water is just blue, and my friends are gorgeous, and my heart is so big, but it's just a heart, and it weighs 8 ounces, except when Maryam sings Fairuz, except when Lynn smiles like someone beautiful smiling, except when my friend strikes the derbakke like someone striking a derbakke, and then my heart is so big, like so big, that I forgive everything that's ever happened. Dear Allah, I forgive you. Dear Mom, I forgive you. Dear Ex, I forgive you. Dear Death, dear Death, dear Death, I am hurtling toward you, but I am also riding a yellow bike, and the wind feels like wind, and Zaza's hands are catching wind the way hands catch wind, and I have just left a funeral, and it was sad as anything sad, but dear Death, I forgive you, dear friends, I am holding you and my 8-ounce heart, and I am already grieving you the way someone who is grieving knows they are grieving and chooses joy and chooses joy and chooses joy. And oh my fucking God, the sky is a sky, and everyone we've ever loved is up there, and every bird we look at may or may not be someone we once loved, and I would do this whole life again, I swear to God, I would do it again if it meant finding you. Thank you guys so much. Please donate. Love you all.
Thank you, Noor, for those powerful words, and just want to also say we're just so sorry for your loss, and just in awe of your courage and resiliency amid like all the pain that you're going through. I think we have time for questions, right, from the audience. And I guess we'll wait for those questions to come in. And I guess what I noticed at the beginning of the event, and over the course of your readings, was this notion of community. Even before, about like someone mentioned Mizna, right, the conference that was held earlier this fall, and how important a space that was to kind of grieve collectively, and to share that space of solidarity. And this space too, I think it can be just really healing. And I guess like on a personal level, have you all been able, being here in America with the horrors that have been going on in Gaza and the West Bank, have you been able to find like a sense of community among peers or others that has like at least helped you kind of survive day to day?
Who wants to go first?
I can go, not because I'm the most brilliant thing to say, but just because I talk about this a lot. I just agree that these spaces have been so important, and I've been telling people that I've never had so much grief or so much love in my life. There's just been this like distillation and like clarity to this season, and I've been, of all of the ways that I've just continued to have my mind blown by evil and horror and just grief. I've also had my mind blown by like the courage and the generosity and the selflessness and just like the beauty, I guess, to quote Noor's like last poem, of my friends. And there's no friendship like the friendship that's like forged through fire. Not like I would ever wish this, or I would ever want to say that it's a good thing that this is happening. But again, like it's very clear. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I see the rest of my life. I see who my people are. I see who my purpose is. I see who my enemies are. So.
I'll go. I think maybe the upside of diaspora and displacement, if you could call it that, is that Palestinians are everywhere. And so, I have, Palestinian American community here in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I'm from and have now moved back to, but I also formed a really great community in Iowa as well, with people across in different cities when I was there for my MFA. And, it actually kind of came about because I went on a trip with Eyewitness Palestine, and then we were hosting a speaker who we met, who lives in Palestine, who we hosted to come to the US to speak. And then I met all of these other Palestinians who were also doing the work of hosting this person. And so I'm always just kind of amazed at the connections and all the different work that people are doing. And I think, too, I have been really grateful in this moment for the anti-Zionist Jewish community. I know that, a lot of people don't have the privilege like I did of going to an MFA program that's not just like very steeped in Zionism. And I felt like I had the freedom to write about Palestine and to form some really good relationships with people who were not Palestinian, but who were very strong allies and who were going to the protests with me and making signs with me. And that has been really important for me too. So.
Just to kind of piggyback off that, I don't know if I believe in the world right now or have faith for it, but I do believe in my fucking friends. Like, that's for sure. And that is like, I'm like with them, and I'm like, I'm here because you're here. That's about it. Like, I'm definitely not here for whatever like future empire is being created. Nor do I know if I'm like holding on to like a sense of hope, or like whatever sense of hope I have is like my friends are holding it literally in their two hands. And I think like that is what I fight for. But I also just want to like shout out, like, Dearborn is so beautiful. When we're not being like the jihad capital of the United States, it's really nice to just like go grab knafa with friends like we did with Sato when she was in town. And the jihad capital, by the way, for those who don't know, is like a Washington Post headline.
Wall Street Journal, yeah,
Wall Street Journal, thank you. It's also nice to be able to like, I can like leave my house and say like like Free Palestine, and someone will like
Mhm.
respond and say Free Palestine. And this isn't something I could do in Ohio. And so like just having that
Mhm.
community also is really nice, to like hear Arabic, to be surrounded by Arab, to be surrounded by
Mhm.
Palestinians. And yeah, I'm just like, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
I don't think I have like the most thought out answer, because I recently came back to the East Coast after being abroad
Mhm.
for a few years. And I travel a lot. Like I feel like I'm in between too many cities. I feel like Nuit knows this, because every time I talk to Nuit, I'm never in the same spot.
In a different place. I'm like, oh, what time zone are you in?
Mhm.
Yeah. And so I feel like I'm the worst person to ask this question, because I don't think, whenever I think about community, I think about it in like a very, very broad sense. Like it's never, oh, I live in this one city, therefore I have access to. I think like everyone that I'm always in contact with is always in a city that I've lived in. And so I think it is a very Palestinian experience. Like, granted that there is no one city
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
to call from. But I feel like I agree with what everyone has said so far. And I think especially what Noor said about like, yeah, I may not believe in this world, but I believe in my friends. And I feel like the only way that, because the only way that I also know how to honor our dead and our martyrs um, is through hope, is through like
Mhm.
this like very steadfast belief that like victory is ours, even in the most desperate of times, even in the worst of times. And yeah, I don't know. The Palestinian struggle is a struggle that I think uh, will continue to enlighten the world and like change the world for so many more decades, even after liberation. I think there's so much to learn. Um, and yeah. I have a good community, but it's a very Palestinian community in which no one is in one place.
Yeah. And I guess, and like, how have you been? I mean, how have you all been able to navigate writing? And some of you have new books out, and like trying to even, celebrate work that's out, but also trying to navigate with what's going on. I mean, how have you been able to balance that? I don't want to say have you been able to balance that, but how, like, if you can just give us insight into that process of like how you've been able to maintain your own writing amid what's going on, or if you have like a new book out. I know Riwa, who started off our conversation, you have a new book out, right? Difficult. The title of the book is called Difficult, and I guess, right, like how to navigate that, like when you have like you're writing with what's going on, or if you have like a new project that you've been working on for several years, and trying to balance that with what's been going on.
Are you asking? Are you
Oh
asking
no,
me or
everyone.
who's
But
everybody?
anyway, I was asking
Yeah, I'd
all
like
the
to hear
writers,
how
but
others are doing that.
I'll chime in just because I have had a kind of an immediate thought, which is I kind of alluded to this in one of my poems, but when I say something like you will write about one urgency to the screaming soundtrack of another. So my thesis project, the kind of draft manuscript of the book that I have, is a nonfiction collection of essays about refugee resettlement, primarily talking about Congolese refugees in the U.S. I spent 4 years doing that work before I went to the MFA. And it was really difficult to be in the most intense part of writing that book while witnessing what's going on in Palestine, because it was like, ooh, I want to be writing about Palestine right now. And like, that's what I felt like my heart was in. But I was also writing this book about this other like very important justice issue. And so I think, for a lot of us, I think we may have our attentions spread in different directions. But I think one thing that kind of helped is that people on social media and stuff are starting to make those connections between Palestine and Congo. And, so I was seeing the connections between some of the work that I was doing, but also, and being able to kind of like revisit and reframe and be like, okay, how can I, write about this from the perspective of like what people are seeing on social media and be like, okay, you may have seen this, so this is what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
But it was really hard to maintain focus when I felt like my, I think maybe a lot of people would agree that like writing through this is the way that we cope.
Mhm.
And when you're writing something else that needs to be written, it kind of takes away from that primary coping strategy.
Oh, no, I think you're
Yeah.
on second.
Yeah, of course. I was gonna say, I just wanted to chime in and say that, like, I feel so fucking weird writing right now, and like wrong, and I like it's bizarre to sit in my little room in the heart of Empire and like in the middle of a genocide and be like type. I'm this like little poem, and I haven't like figured out a way. And I was telling Lena earlier today, because we were talking about the reading, that the poems just sort of like come out in these violent bursts, and then it's another period of like weeks of just like quiet, and this like in between place of feeling guilty for not writing, but then not wanting to write because I also feel guilty. I'm like caught between both of those things, and I'm so grateful that like that folks have been writing and publishing as this is ongoing, because we need to be responding. Like we need our words and our voices out there like right now in the immediacy. But at the same time, I've realized that like I don't actually think I know how to do that right now. Is something that I just want to name.
Yeah. I also want to piggyback off of Noor real quickly. I want to give you the space to talk, but I want to say that it has been just coming in bursts, the writing. And so thanks for bringing up my chapbook, Hassan, which has been recently published, but also it was submitted before October 7. But I also want to say that I've never stopped writing about the homelands and about Palestine. So it's not something that we just woke up and were like, oh, here's a subject that we need to tackle. I don't think we've ever stopped writing about Palestine and about our homelands and about empire, and all the different intersectionalities, and I didn't grow up here and the reasons why I'm here. So it's an ongoing conversation. I think that we didn't just start right now. And so, but I do have to admit that I've just been writing notes on my phone. I haven't been writing as consistently as I'd like to. I also feel like, what's the point? But then again, we look at all our journalists, our writers, our poets are being basically annihilated and strategically murdered. So words matter, because you did say, Farah, was it Summer who said resisting language that is infuriating? You brought that up, right? Just how the media is just continuously distorting our stories and our existence, and so we have that responsibility to keep talking and keep writing and keep reminding ourselves and each other in the world that we exist. And yes, victory is ours. I don't know when. We are in the long middle, as Fargo said, but it is ours. And I think I just want to focus on that. Sorry to take too long, but whoever wants to share, please do.
Well, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Someone was gonna. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sada.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah, we have time. Sorry not to. We have a few minutes, so please do share. We do have a bit of time, and I also want to say we're getting a lot of love in the chat, so just wanted to put that out there.
Love back. I'm just gonna think out loud, because I think about this a lot, and I think in many directions, and it's just like everything right now. It's too many things at once, and I wish none of it was happening. And yeah, it's been very surreal. I was going to read a second piece, but I was out of time. But I was going to read from this essay that I wrote on October 11th, which on October 8th, I was asked to write something. And I said, I'm not going to be writing while this is going on. And then a few days later, the editor asked again. And I thought I would just go to my computer and see what would happen. And then I realized, like, I think it's just been it's been one of those instances where writing has been my way of dealing. I was writing a lot at the beginning. I also had to finish my manuscript. I had to write about half my book since October 7th. So it's been a crazy wormhole of just words. And I think there's like a lot of reason, like writing's been doing different things. Writing, like I said, has been a place for me to think and figure out, and a place for me, especially at the beginning, I feel like writing's taken different iterations during this time. At first it was coping and grieving, and also a form of, I felt like I was able to feel some sort of resistance coming through me in the early days, like that essay on October 11th, like I was using the G word, genocide, and I mean, I just felt a responsibility as someone who knows what the Zionist agenda is, to make sure that it was on the record, for like just to do my little part in making sure no one had any excuse to say that they had no clue that this was coming, because any one of us in this room could have like said exactly what was coming, because we've been living it, and this is, yeah. So there was this moment where I felt like that was an important intervention, and then a few months went by. And I was writing, I think someone had mentioned, like I was writing about witnessing, and I was turning around and like talking to a different group of people and saying, like, we need to basically stop clicking and resharing and thinking that that's something. And also, like, writing in and of itself, it doesn't do anything in and of itself in an emergency, I would say. And that might be controversial, but like, I'm not a writer in Gaza. I'm a writer in the United States, and I said some things that I had to say, and then I felt like there were other things that were more important, and elevating other people's voices was more important. And yeah, so it's taken a lot of different iterations. And then in other ways, there were other things I was writing that I forget who mentioned, I think somebody also, writing for each other. So like George Abraham and I have been doing this like letter series to each other, writing about the idea, like trying to wrestle through some of these questions. I actually started the conversation with them back in July, actually. The first letter was in September, but saying even then, what's the point of writing in the middle of this ongoing Nakba? Like, what do words do? What is the role of a Palestinian writer? And just trying to think through that with them, and then took on so much more intensity since. So writing's been a way of forming community and creating community across space in a virtual way. And then I had to finish my book, which I've wrestled so hard with. Like, you heard a little piece of it, and it takes place, it's about Gaza in so many ways, and it still doesn't feel relevant enough because it's about a different year, and every moment just feels like the only threshold that I feel like I should be standing on. And I've been all over the place. So not coherent, but that's like a snapshot of what I've been doing. And then I feel like I've run out of words in a lot of ways, and just trying to sit with that also lately. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone has said. Back during the Rawi Fest, Fargo and I also had a similar conversation over like, what is the role of the writer in this moment? And it's a question that I've struggled very much with. What is the role of the writer? What is the role of the artist? And I understand like the importance of the cultural revolution, but I do think that there is a very, it feels really different when you're doing it from the middle of empire and you're writing like right inside the belly of the beast versus when you are back home. It's totally different, and like priorities are very different, and it's just a huge shift in navigating the world around you. I think one of my motivators, as petty as this may be, is just spite. Like, I would really rather see another Palestinian take up space than have to read like a Zionist piece. And that's something that like propels me forward in some ways. In other ways, I think that I think a lot about this as like something that I owe my mom and like her family, and like the experiences that my mom endured growing up, and the experiences that I also like lived through growing up back home as well in the Gulf. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really complicated question. I don't think there is one answer. I think it's exactly what you said, Sara, that it's a lot of directions. There is no one answer. And I think a lot of it changes on a day-by-day basis. I just have to think that there is some sort of meaning in what we're doing. Because I feel like this is the one thing that I can give the struggle. This is the one thing that I could give the revolution. This is one thing I can give liberation. This is what I know where my talents are. And so this is what I will use myself for. Yeah.
Can I chime in? I don't want to take up too much time, but I think one thing that I've been struggling with is it's very uncomfortable to feel like I'm getting opportunities for my writing career because of what's going on in Palestine right now. It's it's an extension of something I've always struggled with. Of I'm half white. Am I Palestinian enough to even be talking about this? But I think realizing that there are certain I think there's a fine line between like uplifting Palestinian voices and then all of a sudden, like kind of wanting these token Palestinian voices and like what are the ethics of like suddenly having more opportunity and visibility as a writer because of an ongoing genocide. So that's like something that I've definitely been struggling with myself. And one thing I found interesting, we've talked a little bit about like the urgency of writing, like writing through grief and these like kind of violent outbursts of things just coming out. But and for me, when I write these pieces, I just want to like slap them up on social media because I feel like this is for community. This is for us all to share. But we have this kind of like gatekeeping of the publishing industry. And I've noticed, like there's a lot of calls like we want Palestinian writers, we want Palestinian voices, and then but they won't take pieces that have previously been published on social media. And it's like, okay, but I feel the need to really get them out there in this moment, and I don't want to wait on maybe months for a press to pick it up. And so that's something I've been struggling with too, is like the urgency of like really just wanting to put my words out there so that other people can comment and share, because I really believe that writing is meant to be done and shared in community, but then having to also balance with what do I hold back so that I can put in journals and that kind of thing.
Thank you all for sharing. Rio, I'm not sure how much time we have left. I can give the floor back to you.
Yeah, I think we can wrap up. I mean, I just want to say thank you again for your just wonderful, powerful voices. Thank you, Hassan, for moderating. And I just like taking notes while where each of you are reading, and I'm like crying when Noor's like reading, and just thank you for the work that you're doing. And I think we just constantly think about this, like, what is our role? What are we really doing? Are we really making a difference? We're not on the ground. We're not in Palestine. We're not the actual like physically putting our bodies in danger or facing death. Doesn't matter. I think what's happening on the ground and what the folks are doing is really what really matters at the moment. But again, not to like be redundant, but I think everything that each of you are doing, the work that you are collecting or writing or sharing, whether it's immediately on social or just kind of in journals, matters. And so thanks again. And yeah, I just want to wish you a good night. And if you have any last words or thoughts or anything, you can share them now, or forever hold your peace. But thanks again. I think Sara, yes, you want to say something?
Oh, just I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for organizing, and yeah, I'm consider myself in community with all of you. So if I can ever do anything for any of you, please let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks for attending. We had people from Iowa and from different places, Houston, Texas, and different. I'm looking at where people were calling in from, but now I can't find it. But I saw the different cities where people were logging in from, and thank you for your time and attendance. Good night.